have Ashirwad, who will be giving us a session on uh, document classifier. So he's a C# Corner MVP, and he is overall around 3 years of experience. Uh, he's an active community organizer, and he's a active speaker as well in various user groups and community. So over to you, Ashirwad. You can go ahead with the session.
Hi, Sasirai. Thank you for the invite, and it's a pleasure to host a talk at your community. Sorry, I was on mute at the time. Okay, just
No
let
problem.
me share my screen. And let's get started. Can you give me a heads up that you're able to see my slides?
Yeah, we can see us.
Okay, perfect. So today's topic is more like we are going to build low-code language-based document classifier with Azure Logic Apps. So this is Ashirwad, the speaker for this particular session. So I work as a software engineer at Mindfast Solutions. Most of my work has been around ASP.NET Core. I primarily build cloud-native solutions using .NET Core and build backend APIs using ASP.NET Core. Apart from that, I'm also a Microsoft Certified Azure Developer Associate. I'm a community organizer for different communities based out of Odisha. So one is Service Days Bhubaneswar, there's one other Utkal Techies Forum, and Azure Developer Community Bhubaneswar. So if you wanted to connect with me anytime after this talk, then you can refer to the aforementioned links. So I blog not quite often these days, but I write some blogs on my spare time, and I posted it on my website, just codewithashirwad.com. You can find my blogs over there too. So let's get started with this agenda. So we are going to start off with talking about what Logic Apps is, and we are going to see some of the basic terminologies that you need to be pointed to build solution with Logic Apps. There are actions, connectors, and triggers. Then we are going to have a small demo on action and triggers. Then we are going to look at the problem statement, which the topic actually says that's to build a document classifier based on the language the document is written in. So we're going to solve it, and then we are going to have a small Q&A session. So it'll be great if you guys can tell me like what kind of exposure you have with Logic Apps, so that whether I'll discuss more on that or we can just get some overview and go to the problem statement directly. So if you guys can actually let me know what your exposure is. Anyone who's
Yeah,
seen
sure.
it?
You can go ahead.
Okay, so since nobody was saying anything, so I'll consider that Logic App is a new thing for you. So let's go briefly. So let's get started with the slides. So what are Logic Apps? So Logic App is an iPaaS service offered by Microsoft Azure. So you may wonder what is an iPaaS. So iPaaS stands for Integration Platform as a Service. So what these services actually do is that they help you connect with different services in a cloud or across cloud or between your enterprise servers. So it's like you wanted to connect with a server with a particular service like a blob storage and perform some task on that. Like since we are going to build a document classifier, let's consider a case where documents are involved. Let's consider a scenario in which you have certain files in your blob storage or it's an Azure files, and you wanted to move it to your Google Drive. How do you do it? So you can leverage Logic Apps to do that. And the fun part is you don't need to write a lot of codes. You are going to use a few actions and triggers of different connectors and get the work done. So the other thing that defines Logic App is its per action billing. So action is moreover like how do you phrase it? So it's a Logic App is moreover like a workflow, and a workflow consists of multiple actions. So every time one of these actions actually run, you're only billed for that. It's not like since you have created an Logic App and it's just sitting idle, you're going to pay for that. You're not going to pay for that, to be honest. You're only going to pay whenever your Logic App runs and any of the actions are being executed. So the second is highly scalable. It also has a serverless offering. Like there are two variants of Logic App available right now. So one is Logic App Standard, and the other one is the consumption one. With the consumption one, you have a serverless way of building this workflow-based solutions with Logic App. So it's more like every time your actions run, only for that amount of time you're going to pay. And every time the number of requests that your logic app actually get, it scales up accordingly. So you don't need to define how it's going to scale up or how it's going to scale down. So you don't need to worry about that. It's going to scale up on its own and scale down on its own. So it has 200 plus connectors. Well, this is a bit outdated, to be honest. It's more than 350 plus right now. The last time when I was checking it, so it's highly extensible. So connectors is before diving deeper into connector, I'll just give you an overview. Connector is more like a way to connect with a third-party service that's not there in the cloud, or else to a different service in a way. So if Logic App doesn't has a connector for a service that you wanted to use, then you can create one of your own. Like you have a way to create a custom connector for that particular service and use it in your Logic App. So you can write it once and reuse it often. So you can use the ARM templates of your Logic App and reuse it everywhere, in a different subscription or else inside a different tenant, wherever you wanted to use it. So that's an easy to use design tool. So we have something called a Logic App Designer tool using which we build our Logic apps and define the workflows and everything. So it's a very easy to use tool, and you can create your Logic app inside the Azure portal itself, or else you can also create it using Visual Studio Code and Visual Studio. So that's all about Logic App. So before diving deeper, we need to understand a few terminologies associated with the Logic App. One is connectors. Like in the previous slide, you saw that I had mentioned that there are 200 plus connectors available in Logic App. So what's a connector? We're going to talk more about in the next slide. So we have a dedicated slide for that. So there's triggers. So by the name itself, we can know that triggers are something that are associated with the event. So whenever a particular event happens, this trigger gets executed, right? So we have something called actions. Actions are nothing but the steps you need to take whenever something happens. So we have control flow. So control flow is an interesting item. Since I don't have a dedicated slide for control flow, I'm going to explain it over here. So control flow is more like, let's see, when we write programs, we have some conditional operations, like we can do if else, we can do switch to control the flow of our program execution. So control flows are similar to that. So in Logic App, we define workflows. So in workflow, you have a certain set of steps. Like once A is done, then go for the B, then execute B. Once B is done, go for C. So it's more like with control flow, you can actually control the flow of your whole workflow. It's like if A is greater than 30, you do this, or else you do that. So there is an if else kind of an action, built-in action, using which you can manage the flow of your whole workflow or the execution of your Logic App. So it's more like that. So let's go into connectors. So what are connectors? So as I previously said, connectors are more like a way in which you can connect to other SaaS offerings, or else a different service altogether. So there are various kind of connectors, to be honest. So what are built-in connectors? So what are built-in connectors? So these connectors are natively available to Logic App, and you don't need to create a connection to use them. So since I had mentioned previously that you are connecting with third-party services, like if I wanted to connect with Google Drive has a certain set, is a connector that's available in Logic App, which has a certain set of actions. So to do that, you'd have to connect with your Google Drive to do those stuff, right? So how do you do that? You create a connection with your Google Drive by sharing the credentials, like maybe you're authenticating using Azure AD, or else you're using OAuth to connect with that, or else you are just giving your username and password. So the username and password doesn't happen that way. But yes, you can always authorize the Logic App to connect with a particular third-party app or something like that. So at that particular time, you are creating an API connection. So Logic App will use a connection to do all this stuff, like getting data from your Google Drive, or else writing into your Google Drive and other stuff. So with built-in connectors, you don't need to create a connection explicitly for that. So these are run on custom and advanced schedule. So this one particular built-in connector called schedule, in which you have a particular set of action. Like if you wanted to run your workflow on a defined schedule, like every 5 minutes you need to run it, or every 30 seconds you need to run it, you can do that. So this is one example of a built-in action. Apart from that, there's one more built-in action in which using you can create small APIs, small in the sense simpler APIs, which can accept requests and process it, do some tasks, and give back a response. So I did say it's simple, but you can do way complex things with that. So there's always a possibility. You don't need to write too many lines of code, and you can build a really good API which can actually perform a lot of database operation as well, because there's using a SQL Server connector, or else, whichever kind of database you want to do. So that's a possibility. So it also supports calling Azure functions. So suppose you have some extensive experience in building serverless application using Azure function, you have, or else you have a complex operation that you found difficult to do with Logic App itself. So you have written an Azure function in which you have programmatically done most of the things, and you're giving back a response, and you needed to process this particular response. So you can use this particular action of calling an Azure function and get your work done. You can just pass in all the parameters that your function needs. It will process stuff, then give back the response, and then your logic app will take that response from the function and process it later. That's all about the built-in connectors. So there's other type of connector called managed connectors. So what are managed connectors? These are deployed and managed by Microsoft. So these provide triggers and actions for accessing cloud services, on-premises systems, or both. So with Logic App, as I previously mentioned, it was an iPaaS. So you can connect to different data sources and get your work done, process something. If you wanted to process something, you process it, then store it in a different destination, which can be inside the cloud, outside the cloud, or else maybe with a different vendor. So you can do a lot of things. So it supports actions and triggers for services like Office 365, blob storage, SQL Server, Dynamics, Salesforce, SharePoint. So these are some of the examples of managed connectors that are there on Azure for Azure Logic Apps. So let's see a few examples. So these are a couple of built-in connectors. So one is a schedule. So we use the schedule connector whenever we want to run something on a schedule. HTTP whenever we want to, run this particular what do we say, particular logic app whenever some events happens, and you want to just start it whenever. Okay, with HTTP connector, what happens is that it creates a webhook kind of a URL for you. So you can use this webhook and configure it in your whatever say maybe in a different service, or it's inside your application. So every time an event happens, your application sends a request to this particular webhook, and this HTTP connector provides you a way to respond to that and start processing. Like a GitHub offers and a webhook. So every time a commit happens in GitHub, so all the information about that particular commit, who made it, and all those metadata information will be shared with this particular what do we say, connectors, and then you can accept it using request action and process it. So that's one way to do it. There's another one called request. So these two are pretty much similar, but with request you do things in a very simple way. So it's like after you have created a workflow using a request connector, you have a particular trigger defined as request. So in that you can define the schema of your request body and what kind of data it's going to accept, and you can just use those content that are sent in the request body in that particular request and process it and give back a response. I'll just get a task done. So you can do that. There's one for API management. So these are all about built-in connectors. Now coming to the managed connectors. So these are Azure Service Bus. There's one for SQL Server, one for Office 365, one for SharePoint Online. So with managed connector, you are going to create a connection, API connection, moreover. So it's like if you wanted to, send a message or trigger a particular workflow whenever you receive a message in your service bus queue, then you can use an Azure Service Bus connector to do that. So it's moreover like you'll create a particular connection for that. Then this will this will help you configure the service bus queue from which you want to listen for any particular event. So you can define the same with SQL Server, Office 365, Outlook, and SharePoint Online. So if you wanted to, upload some, update or insert some particular objects or documents inside document library inside SharePoint, you can always do that with the workflow. Or else if you wanted to send an email every time our workflow runs, you can do that with Office 365 Outlook. Or else you can also use Gmail for that. This one connector for Gmail too. Though there are some restrictions with the Gmail connectors. Okay, let's move on to the next one. We have covered connectors. So now we are going to start about triggers. So every connector has two kind of a thing. So one is a trigger and other is action. So connectors are more like wrappers of triggers and actions. Okay, so what are triggers? So a trigger is an event that occurs when a specific set of condition is satisfied. let's consider the example of a database. So in database we write triggers, right? So so when these triggers are run, so primarily these are run whenever a new record has been inserted inside a table, or else something changes. So we have a set of triggers for that. So let's use the analogy similar to this over here. It's like whenever a particular event happens. So this event can be anything. It may be a request to your web URL that you have created, or else a particular service was got a new message, or else a document was uploaded in your document library of your SharePoint in your SharePoint document library. So there are these are various events.
Ashirwad, we are not able to hear you.
Yeah, Ashirwad, you are not audible actually. I think some issue. It's showing offline.
Yeah, Gaurav, it could be the power issue or connectivity issue.
Yeah, yep. Maybe we can wait some time.
Hello.
Yeah. We can hear you. Yeah, you can continue.
Okay, great. So all of us were able to hear till triggers, right? Or did I miss in between itself?
No. It triggers, till triggers we could observe.
Okay, great. Just a minute. I'm sorry for the network issue. Okay. So there are various kind of triggers in logic app connectors. Yeah. So one is the recurrence one. So it's present inside the schedule connector. So with recurrence, you can what we say run your workflow or run your logic app for a particular set of duration. Like if you wanted to do it every 5 times, every 6 times, you can define that, and this workflow will run every day. This one for when a HTTP request is received. So this is a trigger type of the request connector. It works whenever it gets a request from an application, or else you can manually send one using Postman or other API testing tools like Fiddler. This one for Azure.
I think we again lost him.
I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. I'm having a lot of network issue today. I'm really sorry for that.
No
Yeah,
problem.
it's okay. It's okay. Yeah, you can continue.
Okay. So I'll just share my whole screen this time. Okay. We have covered till API management triggers. So this one for Adobe Creative Cloud. So every time a new asset is created in your Adobe Creative account, like you have your own asset, you created that, and you want to start a workflow whenever this asset is created, like you wanted to share this in an email with your team that I have added an asset, you can do that within when an asset is added trigger. This one for S3 bucket, like I told you, right? So with Azure iPaaS services, you can connect to different vendors as well. It's not restricted that you're only confined to Azure services. You can only interact with Azure services. So you can connect with S3 buckets, and whenever a new what we say new file was uploaded in your S3 bucket, you can just push it to the blob storage on your Google Drive. You can do that. Or you can just send a mail using the Outlook send mail action. So whenever a message is there in the Azure queue, you can also do that with the Azure Service Bus queue as well. So this is about triggers. So there are 3 types of triggers. I'll just move on really quickly because we want to go to the demo pretty fast, right? So there are 3 kinds of triggers over here. So one is a recurrence trigger, this one for polling trigger, and the push trigger. So recurrence trigger and polling trigger are very much similar to each other. The only difference is that recurrence triggers don't depend upon any particular specific service, and they are not dependent on a specific service. They run on schedule, and that's how they work. You just need to define what we say the duration in which they need to run, like whether they should run every 3 minutes, 5 minutes, or 6 minutes. But with polling triggers, these are moreover like these are provided by different connectors. So it's moreover like suppose you're using the Twitter connector, and this particular Twitter connector has a trigger that whenever a new tweet is added, you start the workflow. So the problem with this is that it needs to be defined for a particular duration. Like I should poll every 10 minutes or 5 minutes and check whether a new tweet has been created, and you cannot use this trigger anywhere. So it's not generic. So the recurrence trigger is a generic one, but the polling one is not generic. So that's one for push trigger. So this trigger waits and listen for new data or events to happen. So it's more of a like when a HTTP request is received, or when a new queue comes to your Azure storage queue or as your service bus queue, or else whenever a new asset has been added in your Adobe Creative Cloud account. So it's more like that. So push triggers are similar to that. So let's talk about actions. So actions are the key things. So it's like a set of operation that executes a task in your business process. So it was more over a technical definition. So let's see. I want to write something in a note. So an action would be to pick up the pen and start writing on the note, right? So these are actions. So this is what an action means. So an action can be something like you wanted to write something inside a blob. You wanted to create a new file inside a blob, or else you want to copy what we say a file that was there in your blob storage, and you want to copy it to a different blob storage container. So that's kind of an action. Or else you want to send a mail. That's even an action. So actions can be a lot of things. So one example is a response. So we knew that the request connector had one particular trigger called when a HTTP request is received. So you give back a response. Normally, when you send an API request, or else you send a request to any server, you expect a response to be coming at your end, right? Like to tell us whether the request was successfully done or what happened over there. So you need a response. So response is an action over here. So you can choose an Azure function. So that's an action. That's a built-in action actually. So current datetime is again a built-in action. So get a three object content. So suppose you wanted to get all the content from your S3 bucket. So it's more like you can just define the URL over there and get the content from there using this particular. So there's one for start web app. So you can start a web app with that. Okay, we can start a web app, then we can create a file in our Box account. So let's go to a quick demo on triggers and action. So what we're going to do is that we are going to create an simple workflow to what we say. Okay, let's go to home. I'm logged in into my Azure portal, so I'm going to create a logic app here to send an email to anyone over here to send an email every 30 seconds or 5 minutes with some set of what do you say some set of content in the subject as well as in the body. I'm going to create a new resource group for that. So I'm going to create it. RG Power Platform. Okay. So here you can define the logic app name. So I'm going to keep the logic app name as logic app s demo. Select it. Maybe I have it. Okay, this logic app needs to be unique. So you need to make sure that this is a unique name. So you can define the region. I'm going with East US. So I have not enabled integration service environment because I'm not connecting with what we say a BizTalk server, or else I'm not interested to connect with an on-premise environment. So it's a best practice to enable log analytics, but we are not going to do that for this particular demo. So I'm just going to click on review plus create. You can always mention the tags, but I haven't this time around. So that's my bad, but I was in a hurry to show this demo because after that we need to create this document classifier too. So just wait a while. It's taking a bit longer. In the meanwhile, do we have any questions regarding connectors, actions, or triggers?
Uh, One
We
question.
have one question is there, that is how working with Logic App will be different from working in Power Automate.
As far as I know, under the hood, they both use the same, what do we say, same engine. So it's more like most of the actions and triggers are more over similar. So if you have worked with Power Automate, it will be a really similar experience with you, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, to add to that, I think there are few more features in Azure Logic Apps, like we can write the Logic Apps using Visual Studio and Azure Extension, which is not possible in Power Automate as of now.
Right, right. So there's one more feature actually that came up with the new update with Azure Logic App Standard. So it's more like now you can also run your Logic App inside a container. What do we say? Sorry. Um, inside a container. It's like you can, create your Logic app and put it inside a container image and start running it inside an AKS instance or else inside, Docker SOM or somewhere. You can also do that right now. So that feature has also been added.
Yeah,
But this
actually,
time the runtime engine is changed.
okay, actually, I have provided the link in the chat window. It has Microsoft's documentation. Actually, what is the difference between Power Automate and Logic Apps? You can refer that. Whoever asked this question. Okay,
Perfect.
you can
Thank you.
continue. Yep.
Sure. So the resource has been created. Let's go to the resource. And this is how a typical Logic app window would look like when you create it. So by default, you will be directed to your Logic App Designer. So it comes up with a set of templates. So as you can see, these templates are based on the trigger types. So here there's a template for when a message is received to your service bus queue. So this is the trigger type over there, or else when a new tweet is posted. So there are various kind of things. So there's one on record. So we are going to start from scratch. We are going to create a blank Logic app. So we wanted to send mails every 5 minutes or 30 seconds. So what we're going to do is that we can search for a recurrence connector. Okay, maybe my internet is a bit slow. That's why it's taking a longer time. Just wait a minute. Okay, so we have this. We have selected the scheduled connector. So it has two kind of triggers. So triggers and the so here we need to define the intervals. So what are the intervals? So interval is like the value, and the frequency is more like the minutes, months, weeks. So whenever you need to do it. So whatever cadence you need to follow in running this particular workflow, you can define it. Since I wanted to run it every 1 minute. So I'm going to define it over here, and you can see that we have added our trigger type as recurrence. So now I needed to send a mail. So what I'll do is that I'm going to click on add an action, and I'm going to search for Outlook. So I've selected Outlook. Okay, so I'm going to select Office 365 Outlook. Then I need to select the send mail action. So send mail, send mail. Okay, send an email. So this is the action we are going to use to send an email. So it will ask to ask us to sign in with our Outlook account. So I'm going to use my Outlook account to send this mail. So this is going to create a connection, so an API connection for using this particular service. So every time you use a managed connector, you have to create a connection. So since here Outlook 365 is an what do we say? Managed connector. So it's part of the managed connector. You need to create an action and you need to authenticate yourself. I have authenticated myself this time. There are actually other ways to also do it. So we will see it in the later demo. So okay, so it's creating a connection for us. Actually, it's really fast. The process is actually pretty fast, but this time, since my internet is a bit slow, that's why it's taking more time. So I'm going to specify my email address over here. So this, or else anyone from the attendees can actually share their email address. if you wanted to see it on a real-time basis. So I'll say this test using hey. So once I save it, I can also attach and document over here, but I'm not doing it, but I can always do that. So once I do that, what I need to do is that I'm going to click on save. So when I click on save, it will start the trigger then itself. So every time I click on save, your logic app workflow actually start with the recurrence trigger. So it would have started the workflow at the first place itself, and you can always manually start it by clicking on run trigger. So it has saved it, I guess. So let's move back to the connector and see whether it worked. I'm gonna refresh it over here. It usually takes some time to show back the changes. So just a minute. Okay, I probably saved it. Okay, still saving my logic app. It failed. Okay, let's do it quickly again. Maybe due to an internet issue. Just a minute. We'll quickly wrap up this demo. Okay. Just let me reconnect Shashi and Nagnath. Just give me a moment.
Yeah, sure, sure.
Okay, I've reconnected. So this is basically an internet issue, to be honest. So uh, my network was fluctuating a lot. That's why I had to connect with my mobile network. So, Demogods are not happy with me today, I guess. I'm gonna quickly do it as Power Platform UG. Hi. So here I've given my email address and the subject is Power Platform. So I've saved it. No, I haven't saved it. I'm going to save it right now. So once it is saved, okay, the save has been completed. So we'll go over here and see whether it triggered once or not. So I'm going to click on refresh. So it triggered twice. So it fired once and it fired second. So let's open my Gmail account and see whether we got the mail or not. So I think we should have already got the mail because it triggered twice. So I got the mail twice, as you can see. Test UG was the subject and hey, oh, I'm sorry. So we are quickly done with this. So we are going to create a new one. So you can disable your logic app, but just by just clicking on disable over here. So you can also do that using PowerShell and as your CLI. But we are not going to dive deeper in that. We are going to focus on our. So our problem statement, so let's quickly go to the slide and look at the problem statement. So the problem statement is moreover like we are working at a startup which has a task of collecting people's view on various government schemes and social welfare programs. So you collect a lot of, you have a lot of employees who collect feedbacks from different people across India. So in India, we speak a lot of languages, right? So we didn't take that into the consideration while gathering feedback. So what happened was that people of different states were actually giving feedbacks in their own languages, and the feedback was written in their particular language. The problem is that now we wanted everything in English because we wanted to work on that. We wanted in a generalized language so that everyone can actually work on it. So we were facing with this particular problem. Then one of our team had actually suggested us to hire a couple of people to rewrite the whole report in English. But not everybody knows all the languages, right? So basically, I know Odia. Maybe somebody else knows Telugu, Tamil, or else somebody knows Hindi. But all of us can't, know all these languages, right? So what we came up with that is that we wanted to build a document classifier. So what we'll do is that we'll store all of what we say, all our repos, all our feedback repos written in all these languages in one particular container inside a blob container, and we will use a particular Azure Logic App workflow to actually categorize each of those documents in a folder in the language they are written in. So if there are A, B, C, there are 3 files. One is written in English, the other in Hindi, the third in Odia. So what we're going to do is that we're going to create 3 folders with the name of the language like English, Hindi, Odia, and all the files that are written in English will be dumped in the English folder, and the ones written in Hindi will be there in the Hindi folder, and the ones written in Odia will be.
I think we lost him again.
So we have only these guys who are responsible for converting the languages from a particular language itself. So this one guy who needs to rewrite the feedback from Odia to English, he will go to the Odia folder and pick up all the feedback reports that are written in Odia, and he'll try to transpile that. Similarly, the one in Hindi will, get all the files from that particular folder and do it. So for that, we need 3 things. We need to create a text analytics service. We need to create a storage account where all our files will be there. And we need to, get our logic app prepared. So let's get started with the storage. Already created. So time I have created the text analytics instance as well as the storage account here itself. Click on the storage explorer. Okay. Oh my God. It's taking a longer time. Fine. Okay, so we were able to see our blob containers. There are two. One is destination and source. So further, while creating the demo, while having a test drive, I have already done a few stuff over here. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to delete this particular container, or hello, hello.
Yeah, Ashirwad,
Yes.
we are able to hear you.
Hello.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Ashirwad, we can
Now
hear
we
you.
can, now we can hear you.
but I think there is some network issue from your end, so that's why it is
Yes.
keep on fluctuating. So
Yes.
Okay.
I'm really sorry for that. It's actually I had a power cut and the broadband doesn't seem to work well now. So
Okay.
I'm really sorry.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, it's fine. Okay, you continue. Let's see how the things are going on. So we'll wind up. Anyways, we are already 15 minutes ahead. So yeah, we will wind up.
okay. Okay, I'll quickly do it things up. So there are
Sure.
three folders. Sorry, there are two folders: source and destination. The source folder contains three documents. So these are the files that are there. So one is document one, which is written in English. So there's hello. There's doc two, which is written in Hindi, namaste. So there's one in written in Odia, namaskar. So I have these three documents, and I want to build up a solution to quickly classify those things inside of a folder they are written in. So I haven't defined any metadata, anything, any kind of thing which will help in understanding the language they are written in. So we are going to create a logic app to do that. So since I have been in, let's create a logic app quickly. So I'm going to add a new consumption one. So consumption is basically the serverless one. So I'm going to name it. Okay. So let's put it in this resource group. Doc classifier. So the process is very similar to the one we did with the email sender one. So let's click on review and create and quickly create our resource. So it's just going to do a normal validation. Once the validation done, let's click on create. Okay, so the resource is being deployed, it's being provisioned. Okay, the resource is created. Let's go to the resource. So let's go with the blank one. Search for schedule. So we are going to run this trigger every day. So every day is going to work and get all the document and get things done. Okay, so let's click on schedule and let's keep it as a day and let's keep it as one every day we want to do it. So the first thing is that we need to get all those documents that are written inside that particular blob. So we are going to search for blob storage connector over here. So blob storage. So first we need to get the list of all the blobs that are there in the source container, source blob container. So what we do to get that, we need to use this list, get list of blobs or list of blobs actions from the Azure Blob Storage connector. So we need to define a connection. So I'll have to give a name. So test UG. I'm giving it a random name. So you can do an Azure AD integrated and access key. But since we had a demo of how to use OAuth and other things to do it, so I'm going to go with this key one. So this is other way of doing it. So you need to define the storage account name. So let me sign in. The storage account name is moreover like so this is the storage account name. So test demo logic app. So I'm going to go that and paste it over here. So to now you need to enter this as a storage account access key. So how do you get that? So you need to go to your access keys and get it over here. So okay, I'm going to click on show keys. It's not a good way to do it, but I'm just showing it just for the sake that there's a way to do it. So it's like I'm telling an alternative way to do it. So I'm going to create a connection. This will create a connection using which we can connect with our blob storage or the storage account. We can do a lot of things with that. So it's going to create this particular connection. Once the connection is created, we will go through all the documents that are there inside. So to do that, we will have to click on add an action and search for a control called for each. So with the help of for each, we are going to iterate through that. So this particular container is actually gonna give us a particular response. So that's gonna be value. So we are going to iterate through all the values. So we need to define, we need to use, define the connection string over here, the API connection which we had created. So this was the API connection. So I'm going to specify the root user, specify the folder. So this folder is nothing but the container. So since I have all my files in the source container and the source folder in a way, I'm going to select that. And that's all I wanted to do here. So I want to get the content of the files now. So how do I do that? So I'll again use the blob storage container and try to get the content of the blob using get blob content action. So here again, I need to specify the connection. So test demo logic app, and I need to specify blob. So you can manually specify the blob, or else you can use the value that was written by your list blob content and define it over here. So I'm going to use the value as name. Okay. So after you get the value, now you need to use now that we got the content that is there inside the blob. What we need to do is that we need to get what we say. We need to classify. We need to identify which language they were written in. So how do we get that? So we can do that by using the text analytics connectors, a particular action called detect language. For this, you need to again create what we say a sort of you need to create a connection. You need to define what we say your API key and site URL. So just a minute, I think I did an error here. So it's not a name, you need to define the location over here. So it's more over like, sorry, the path. So this is the path. I missed it somehow there. So you need to, I'm sorry. So you need to create a connection for your, for this logic app to connect with your cognitive service that you created for text analytics. So I'm going to go back to the screen and I'm going to go to key and endpoints to get my endpoint and the key. So I'm going to get my key over here. So I'm going to paste my key over here and create a connection list. Test cogni and paste the endpoint. So this is the endpoint. So I have created an Azure Text Analytics service before this demo to save some time. So you can create an cognitive services in a similar way we actually created an logic app or this storage account. So here you need to specify document ID. I'm going to give it as this particular ID written from a list blob. So now you need to provide the file content over here, the content that is written inside this particular blob. So it's more like I have 3 documents over here, right? Which was doc1, doc2, doc3. So whatever content that was written in, I need to pass it in this document text. So this is provided by the get blob content action. So this file content. So I'm going to paste it. So after that, it's going to provide us with a list of documents. So right now it will just give us a single document. So but still, we need to iterate all through the document. So we'll use another for each loop over here. So here we are going to parse through the list of documents that our detect language is sharing with us. And now we are going to put this file depending on the language they are written in inside a folder in our destination container. So how will we do that? So we will again use another action of our blob storage connector, this create blob. So I'm going to use a create blob action, and I'm going to connect with this particular, what do you say, storage account. I need to define what do we say, the folder where it needs to upload. So I need to select destination over here. Sorry. Need to select destination over here. Now I need to define the file. Inherently, blob storage doesn't has a folder-like structure. So to do that, what we'll do is that, so I'll take this name from which is written from our detect language action. So this name is nothing but the language the file content was written in. Then I will move it with a slash. Then I will define the name of the blob, the initial name that was there in the blob. So to do that, okay. So you will get the name of the particular file or the blob from the list blob actions what we say from the list blobs action written by the list blob action. So you have defined this particular name over here. Now you need to specify. I'm sorry. Now you need to specify the blob content. So the blob you will get the blob content from the get blob contents action. So you don't need to modify anything over here, right? You don't need your logic app to translate everything back from whichever language they're written into English, right? We want to keep it as they were. Just we need to categorize them in the language they are written in. So I'm going to put the file content as whatever they that was there. So once I do that, I'm going to click on save, and we are ready to see the demo in action. I'm just going to click on. Okay. I'm going to click on save. So let's see what happened, whether we got any error or everything worked well. I'm gonna click on refresh and see whether the trigger started or not. It usually takes some time.
So meanwhile, if there are any question you can ask Ashirwad. Meanwhile, the logic app is.
Sure, that will be great. If you have any question, do let me know and we'll get it answered now. So
We are already 20 minutes ahead. So
I'm sorry for the delay. There were a few network fluctuations which I would have wished I would have avoided, but these are unavoidable things.
yeah.
So any questions? As you can see that we have 3 folders here, English and the Odia. So you can see that we have a particular folder named doc context, and I'm going to download it and just open and let you know what the content that's there. So I have not modified any content, but it has just what we say. Oh, I'm able to click on down, but not downloading for some reason. Okay, either way, it classified the things. So does the work either way. So the demo was almost done, and it's all done from my end. So this is how you create a document classifier using Azure Logic Apps. So this is how we solve the problem, and it's time for Q&A. Anything you have, any questions you have in your mind, please do let me know. We'll try to answer that.
Yeah, any questions you can ask, and yeah, apologies for the disturbance we had. So I think there are no questions in the chat window as well, Ashirwad, as of now. I think we are good.
Okay, so I had this one particular book that I've written on Azure Functions, so I just wanted to spread a word about it. So it's up for pre-order, is there on production now. So it's going to launch. It's going to be launched sometime around September. So this is the link where you can go and get this particular book. So this is one of my favorite Azure services that I've worked since a pretty long time. Probably I started my journey with Azure Functions. So this is my first book. So if anybody is interested to learn about Azure Functions, so have a look at this book. So finally, I would like to thank Goloknath and Shashi for inviting me and having me host this particular talk. It was a great opportunity to speak at Power Platform User Group based out of Odisha, and I really feel proud that I was part of this community. So at the end of this talk, if you ever wanted to talk anything about Azure serverless offerings in particular, or anything specific to Logic App, please reach me out. So this is my Twitter handle and this is my website. You can just drop me a message, and I'll make sure that I reply back to you. Apologies for the network issues that I had because of the glitches. I'm really sorry for that. Thank you all for being patient and being together. Thank you.
Thank you all. So